All right, people, welcome to another edition of the New Breed Podcast, the world's best podcast. Yes, I said it, best podcast, talking about the topic of new with a U, everything Avery remotely new metal related. I'm one half of your hosting duo, Jay Horskow. With me, I have my road dog partner in crime, fresh from a wasted trip to Asbury Park, New Jersey to see Limp Bizkit, Mr. Tim Anderson Jr. Tim, how's it going?
I'm still a little hurt from that. I'm not going to lie.
I'm heartbroken, man. I went home and went to bed. The wife was like, "What's wrong with you?" It's like I got dumped. It felt terrible. Well, anyway, so for this episode, we have a special guest, guitarist from the band The Breathing Process, Mr. Jordan Milner. Jordan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for letting me show my face on your podcast.
Dude, anytime, man.
Yeah, the pleasure is definitely all ours. So, Jordan, you guys have a new album coming out soon, right?
Yes, October 8th. It comes out. It's called Labyrinthian. It's, I don't know how to describe it, but it's
fucking
cool.
Good.
Yeah, it's good.
Let's
good.
say that.
All right, I guess. But yeah, we get signed a unique leader like in the winter, and they think it's good, I guess. So they're gonna put it out and see what happens, I suppose. We're actually writing another one now because we were so used to like kind of being in writing mode during the pandemic that we just don't really know how to pump the brakes. So we've got like some kind of rough demos for the next album already. We're working them out now. But
I would be surprised if you were the only band that did that, right? Because a lot of bands were making hay, right? I mean, yeah. And now you're starting to see all the release dates start stacking up where people are starting to come out with everything. And it's like, it's going to be a bumper crop in the next 6 to 9 months for all of us music fans to have all this stuff just coming out of nowhere.
Well, it's because music is so accessible now with streaming. Like, it's funny. I was, if you kind of compare it to the 90s with new metal, album cycles were like 2-3 years because they were all selling so many that they had to tour on them for so long. Now, like, bands are starting to just pump out content and songs and singles. Like, if you wait more than like a year and a half, then you have to kind of start over in terms of momentum. Yeah,
it's a good point. You kind of get lost, right?
Yeah.
Because then you have bands like look at the Black Dahlia Murder. Like, they are notorious. Every 24 months there's an album. They tour for 18. They go right back in for 6. They take 3 months off, 3 months to record, and then they're right back out on the road. Like, and it's cool, but it's Jordan, at some point, doesn't it kind of feel like a grind though?
Well, I imagine for a band like them, like, because they've done that same consistent schedule for so long. Like, I don't know how they do it, but they make it work, and they spend all of their lives on the road, and it works for them. And I think they're a really good example of how to, like, I mean, they're a big band in like metal circles, but in terms of just like music in general, like they're still, or in terms of like records sold, like they're still not an enormous size band. Like Black Dahlia couldn't headline like an arena, but they're a perfect example of like how you can really make money at touring and playing in a metal band.
Right.
You have to do it the right way,
Yeah, and I would argue that the analog for them in the hardcore world is a band like Converge or like Every Time I Die, where they consistently put out new stuff. They tour and they're well respected, and they don't make radio stuff, and yet their shows sell out. They get, what was it? Converge going out with what? Meshuggah and is it Meshuggah and Torche?
Torch.
Yeah, Torch. Yeah.
I don't know if it's Torch.
I don't know. We should find somebody from the band to get them on just so they can answer that question.
Have you heard them before?
I've heard them, but I haven't heard any of the newer stuff.
Oh man, they're so heavy. I can't imagine what they'll. I feel like I don't know a whole lot of like tours they've done, but I don't know that they've done one this big or at venues this big. And hearing how massive they sound on like the giant venues they're playing with Meshuggah is probably going to steal the show, I imagine. So that would be a really fun tour to go see.
Band.
Yeah.
Dude, so I was telling Jay on the drive up last night, like I didn't, how I know, where you've been on my other show, but I was telling him like back when I was, it was like 12 years ago, and I heard your guys' second record, how it was like in my CD player for like an entire summer. Like, I think I listened to it like every day.
That's how you know it's old, when you had it in a CD player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but dude, when I seen you guys put out a new record, I was super excited. So I mean, and the track I heard, man, so fucking good.
Yeah, the pre-release track is good. Yeah.
Thank you. We've definitely spent more time on this record in terms of writing and demoing than I think any other record that we've done. Because when we started, like, usually any other album we've done, it's like always just been kind of, me and like one or two other people doing the bulk of the writing. And this record, like, we all, like, all six of us really like hammered it all out in different pieces and stuff. And it just came out like way better. To me, I guess every like musician says, "Oh, this is like our best album." Like it is in terms of what went into it. I'm not sure, like, it's kind of up to people to decide if it's better than previous works that we've done, but it's the most like cohesive record we've made, and we're all really excited about it. And I think we actually have our next single comes out, I think, on Friday.
Nice.
Friday or Saturday, Thursday or Friday. I can't remember the exact
Awesome.
date, but yeah, be on the lookout for that one.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we definitely will.
I'll be scouring the new release section on Apple Music Friday.
Yeah, that would probably be good. I'm like really bad at remembering dates. Like, even if I write them down, I was like, 15 minutes ago, like, I remember this now. I have to do this. Like, I'm very like last minute with everything that I do. So, yeah, it's either Thursday or Friday.
Well, you and Jay have something in common, because he's the same way.
See, I don't forget, and the running joke with us, Jordan, is like, whenever it comes to I do the audio release, Tim does the video, and 12 o'clock on a Wednesday, we know every other Wednesday, like clockwork, and it's fucking 12:06, and I hear my phone beep, and without even looking at my phone, I know it's Tim going, "Asshole, you never pushed this week's episode." And I'm just like, do I acknowledge Tim just texted me, or do I just sign in real quick and push it out? Because
I've been here like for 20 minutes waiting for you. Where have you been? That's what you just have to pretend that you were there, and it's Zoom's fault. They'll probably forget.
There you go.
Right.
Probably the best way to do it.
So Jordan, let's talk while we're here. Right? Let's talk a little bit about nu metal. Like, what were some of the first bands you came across? How did you get it? I mean, I guess the easy question for me to ask is, how old are you? Because that really tells me a lot.
Right. So I'm 35.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I was like alive and like into music when nu metal was like really the thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's funny too, like nowadays you have so many people that just pretend that they were born listening to Cannibal Corpse or something like that, and they you all listen to nu metal. Shut up. Like, it's all right to be okay with it. But so I think, I started listening to just music in general when everyone just hears music when you're a little kid, but you don't really like start getting into it until
finding it and searching it out.
Until you're a miserable, pissed off teenager. That's when you start actually liking music. So before then, like, all that I really had access to, because my mother wasn't super into music, was just like whatever my friends, like older siblings, would play, which was usually like hip hop and stuff like that, which I still love to this day. But I think that's why like nu metal was so appealing when I turned like 12 or so, is that it was kind of, a merging like hip hop and metal in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure the first like real song where I was like, whoa, this is cool, like I want to hear more of this, was Got the Life by Korn, because I saw it on MTV, like when it premiered, not like, years later in like look back when MTV used to play music. Like, this was like when it first came out. And there was a record store like right down the street from my house, and I walked there. I'm pretty sure I stole like $10 from my mother and like out of her purse, maybe 20. Like, she won't notice, whatever. And I bought Follow the Leader, and right next to it was $3 Bill, y'all. And the guy who worked there was like, "Oh, you probably like this too." And I was a kid. I was like, "Well, I have $20 and it's like $9.99 for each one." So I was like, "All right, cool." So I bought those and like just started listening to them like on repeat forever. And then I hung out when I was that age. Like I hung out with a lot of like juvenile delinquent kids. You know,
aren't most kids that age though juvenile delinquents? Like we kind of all were. You know,
right? I hung out with the goth kids. You know, and this, like they were older and. This one kid, like we both skipped school one day and he brought over, remember when you used to have to carry like a giant book of CDs?
Binder, yeah.
It was like a whole folder. Like you couldn't just take out your phone and have endless options. You had actual hardware you had to lug around to listen to stuff. So he had like every new metal band you can think of. Like that's where I first heard like Deftones, Rammstein, Manson, and then he had so Deftones are still my favorite band now. Like there's like Deftones and then a huge gap and then like all the rest of the music that I was
Yep.
Okay.
Same here.
Yeah, Tim's the same way. Yep.
They have one like album that I don't really like and everything else I love.
Is it Gore?
It is Gore. That's the same. Okay. I think that's a consensus for everybody. Like it was a bad album because they didn't write it together. That's like the whole reason why they sound the way they sound is because, you know, from any interview that you read or hear from them, like, you know, Chino and Steph have very differing styles and it's the argument over what song gets more of whose influence. That's what makes them sound so unique, you know? Mm-hmm. Gore was very just like, it sounds like Chino wrote the whole album.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it's actually documented that he wrote a decent amount of it. And Steph Carpenter was just kind of meh about the whole process. You know, like there's like one and a half good songs on Gore, I think. And then the rest.
Let me guess your favorite song. It's either Hearts Wires or Prayers Triangles.
Prayers Triangles.
See, I really like Doomed User. For whatever reason, that song sticks in my head.
That's a good one.
But I mean, like all their albums, Jordan. I think you know all their albums, even like the ones that aren't so great. There's still at least 2 or 3 solid tracks. Or if you had to build a whole playlist of no more than 2 tracks per album, you could easily fill it.
Sorry, Sarah brought me a coffee. Yeah, like they have. That's the thing. Like just because they're bad for them compared to themselves, they're still good songs. Like they're just, you know, they're not those really big, like lush chorus sounding songs that you remember from them. You know?
Yeah.
So after that, like my friend gave me, or he showed me the CD of Slipknot's first CD, the self-titled. I was like, I think like 13, maybe like at the height of me being like a badass kid and getting in trouble all the time, you know? And I was so fascinated just by the album cover because I'd never seen anything like it. And he, this was back when like you could dub things on cassette tapes, like off the CD or off the radio or something like that. So he taped it for me. And I listened to that album for like just every day for like a year. Like I was completely obsessed with it. I made like a Corey Taylor mask out of like paper mache and like rope. Like I was obsessed with Slipknot when I was like 13 or 14. And I still love them to this day. You know, so I'd say like that, those, like the bands that really like made a huge impact on me as just a person and what kind of made me want to play guitar was like Deftones, Slipknot, and Korn probably. You know?
Yeah, Slipknot is I argued with somebody Slipknot is our generation's Kiss.
Yeah,
they're our generation's Kiss, right? They came out, they made they had a totally wild aesthetic, which nobody knew what to do with it. And at that point, you were kind of like blown away by what you saw to the point where what you heard, it was kind of, I mean, it's way more incongruent with Slipknot than it is with Kiss, right? Like Kiss, they show up and you're like, oh my God, what are these guys doing? And then they go into like, you know, I Want to Rock and Roll All Night. You're like, okay, I can kind of sort of see it, right?
Love
then you have 9 dudes, Love Gun. You got 9 dudes on stage wearing prison jumpsuits, flailing around, and it's like, what is this? It's a prison riot, and it's not even in a mosh pit. But yeah, it's that first album was, I mean, a lot of people, that was very, very formative for them. You know, it's funny that you said you picked up Follow the Leader at the same time you picked up $3 Bill. Because I remember picking up $3 Bill, and Tim and I have had this conversation where I remember listening to it and going like, man, this guy's vocals are terrible. Like the first time I heard it, that was my first thought. And then I listened to it a couple times and I went, I think these guys are going to be big. Like, and it was even with you could just tell there was something there.
Right. Like the thing like about any of those bands, like Jonathan Davis, Fred Durst, Chino Moreno, like by music theory standards, all their voices are dog shit. Like they can't actually sing, but I mean, they can sing, but they can't, they're not good, quote unquote.
Right.
But it fits their, like, could you imagine like someone else singing for Korn? Like it just wouldn't sound the same. It wouldn't, there's no way, you know, and that's like why, like a band, you take a band like King 810, for example, nobody else could front that band and make it sound that way. Like they're unique to that vocalist. You know, and that's what a lot of those new metal bands were about, is like, and that's what made them all sound so uniquely different. Like you look at the scene nowadays with like deathcore, and there's a million bands that all sound like Suicide Silence, or now everyone kind of wants to sound like, you know, Lorna Shore or whatever. Like there's no unique identity because all the vocalists sound really similar.
It's the Cookie Monster stuff, right? Like after a while, it does get kind of derivative.
When you don't have any dynamic, there's no like you're in comparison to yourself. Like if you're extreme all the time, then you're really not that extreme at all compared to yourself, you know?
Right.
So it's a similar principle, I guess. Like back then, every band's vocalist had their own kind of identity, you know. Mudvayne sounds who sounds like Mudvayne? Nobody. Who sounded like them then? Nobody. They sounded like their own little lane. No one sounded like Korn. No one sounded like Deftones. It took music like 30 years for a band to sound even remotely close to Deftones, which is the band Loathe.
Yeah, who I love. I absolutely love.
They're so good. Like their last album, I mean, absolutely in love with it, because it's like
beautiful.
It's what I wish Deftones sounded like still, but they don't anymore, you know? So it's kind of like, to me, you know, it's like a passing of the torch, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that vocalist in that band, that's top-notch vocal ability right there.
Yeah.
For Loathe?
Yeah.
That's, so all the singing is the guitarist. The screaming is the screaming is the singer. Like, but I think they kind of both sing now, but the one that really has the Deftones vibes is the guitar player.
Oh shit! Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, they're coming over here to open for somebody. Who is it?
Yeah.
Is it Circa Survive? Why do I want to say it's Circa Survive?
That's a great show to go see if it is.
Yeah, it would.
I love Circa Survive too. They're one of my so I went from new metal, and then I had like an emo scene phase, because that was when it was first a thing.
Yep.
You know, so like I've never admitted this in public before, but I have absolutely gone to a Dashboard Confessional concert, and I had a great time at it.
Oh, he's got a great voice, and he writes good music. Like he writes memorable music, and you know, you shut on whatever you want. I mean, but Jordan, you're just reiterating a stereotype that Tim and I have joked about incessantly, where it's those of us that like heavier music are way more expansive in our palate, because you can't. To your example, you can't listen to Cannibal Corpse nonstop. You'll end up like Jeffrey Dahmer, right?
Yeah.
You'll end up like a serial killer. Yeah.
Or it just gets boring. Like, cause it's just, you know, like that's how I feel about some, like tech death bands, for example. They're all like some of the best fucking musicians on earth. Like I would never in a million years be able to play shit like Arcspire, you know, or who's another one? Like Infant Annihilator or something like that. They're all awesome in that space, and there's definitely people that will just listen to that and love it to death. For me, I can only listen to it for like, you know, 10 minutes before I start, my brain just starts to melt, and I'm like, I just can't comprehend it anymore, you know. It's like it's too much speed, I guess, which kind of blasphemous for a metalhead to say, but
no, it gets tiring. It gets it's mentally tiring.
Ears, I guess.
I think people like us that are in the new metal too, like, because I love Archspire, but like after 2-3 songs of it, I'm like, I need groove. I know they have groove, but you need groove. You know what I mean?
That's the difference between some people in metal. I feel like is some people are into strictly like the technicality or speed, and there's others that are into like the groove side of it. And nu metal people are typically into the groove side of it, because that's what you grew up on.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, Tim and I were talking about the other day, Jordan, about how people forget about nu metal is 90% of the bands that got super successful wrote good songs. Like you had tunes, you actually had tunes. And it's not just all technicality. It's not just stage presence and aesthetic. You need to be able to write memorable music. And there are the handful, I guarantee you, you could name any one of the first wave nu metal bands, you name that band and somebody will instantaneously have a song in their head because like, oh, okay, I remember that. You know, Incubus, certain shade of green right there. It just pops up in my head. The opening guitar riff. Yep.
I think a lot of people in bands don't realize the importance of a bridge. You know what I mean?
It's because like, you know, and this was something that even me as a songwriter, like it took me years and years to really understand. Like, if you look at any band with great songs or big hits, why is this song so popular? What about it makes it so popular? You know, and when you really break it down, you're right. Like they're just great songs. They're just like it's not about. It doesn't have to be the most technical or the heaviest or have the most ridiculous vocal part or something like that in it. It just has to be something that is memorable, that people can listen to like once or twice and know all the words. Like people in metal like hate on hip hop so much. And it's like, well, if I showed you like one of these songs twice, you would remember the chorus to it, whether you like the song or not. It's stuck in your, I can't stand Cardi B, but like I know all of her songs because I've listened to them like twice, you know, because it's like it's just implanted in your brain like that. And I wish more metal bands took that like formula but just applied it to metal. Yeah. We would have a lot bigger like of a platform, you know.
Yeah. You know, call back to one of friend of the podcast, one of Tim's interviews, Rob Wharton. You know, their new album is great. And Rob even said, he goes, this is the first album where I actually kind of repeated the riffs I used earlier in the song. I didn't just go new riff, new riff, new riff, new riff, next song. And he said that in an interview. And then I caught an interview with a completely unrelated Mike Kennedy from VOD, where he talked about how when he went back and listened to that first album, you know, Element, which is a brilliant song, they don't repeat that opening guitar line until the end of the song. And he said, yeah, it's kind of embarrassing how I came up with these good ideas and then I would just abandon them and go on to something else. And I was like, like I never thought about it that way.
And that's what I meant. Like it takes a while for you to just kind of shake off the solo musician player mentality of I just want to play what is the hardest for me to play, what I can show off with, because aside from other guitar players, no one gives a shit. It's like a regular listener, like you know, and
right.
It's funny, it's like Rob Wharton is one of my favorite guitar players in terms of like writing style, because his riffs are insane. They're so catchy, but have a lot of groove to them, you know?
Yeah.
And like, he's, you know, just like me, like he's been around the scene for a long time and like has been writing songs for a long time. And it's just kind of the progression you take. Some people understand it sooner than others, I guess, but you know, that's kind of what it takes. And you're like, again, your average listener. That's why I've had this conversation so many times where you take like the best known guitar players in the world, minus Tosin Abasi, because he's just an anomaly of a guitar player. But,
yeah, he's in Mars, right? He's on Mars.
Like, but the people that are really like Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and stuff like that, they're among guitar players. This is like Mount Rushmore. But how, like, do you think people listen to their songs, quote unquote?
No. Yeah, you got a great point.
They don't sell records. Well, I mean, they do amongst other musicians, really, but like general music fans, which are the bulk of, you know, the music industry consumer, doesn't care like about your 20-minute noodle solo. You know, like they want something. They want like 4 words in a row that they can remember, and something that makes them think of something relevant in their life. You know, so it's like it's funny because it's the simplest thing, but it's the hardest thing to figure out how to do. You know, like when people, especially the conversation of nu metal, like I see this more with kids now, I guess, but like, you know, they'll compare it to like really technical underground bands, like, oh, Slipknot sucks because, and this deathcore band is better because they're heavier and they're more technical. And it's like, well, Slipknot sold like 20 million albums. So,
and your drummer probably loves Joey Jordison. So
we all do. Like, it's weird now at this age, like celebrity deaths are really starting to get to me. Like, when I was younger, I didn't care because I didn't grow up with these people, but like, Joey Jordison or like Chester Bennington, that I heard about that, I was like, fuck, man. Like I had like depressing nights in my bedroom with Hybrid Theory, and like it's weird seeing somebody that made that much of an impact to me as an artist, like just not here anymore, not able to make it. And Joey Jordison, here's where Slipknot really deserves their credit, right? Because I've seen this a lot, especially lately after he passed away. Like, the younger kind of deathcore generation, where they're like, "Oh, Slipknot sucks," and like, they don't give a shit. Blah, blah. And it's like, what they don't realize is that the core of Slipknot came from death metal bands. They weren't just like rappers with jinkos that just decided to play rock music one day. What they and nu metal kind of killed that initial original like death metal scene, like Cannibal Corpse and Deicide, Morbid Angel, that kind of stuff. Like major labels in the early 90s were really looking at bands like that and signing them, or trying to sign them, because they were gaining traction. Then nu metal came along and showed that, oh well, this sells way more records, so death metal went back to the underground until Slipknot came out. Slipknot showed that you can have like these extreme kind of sounds and songs and still sell records. And it paved the way for death metal, deathcore, all this to like have a platform like it does now. Like back then, a deathcore band would have never been like touring big venues or festivals or any of that stuff. And now,
Suicide Silence would not have gotten as big as they got without Slipknot kicking open that door and saying, you can be kind of nutty and extreme, and there is an audience for it, right? They proved to the major labels that there is an audience for that will come out and to support it.
Absolutely. And now it's bigger than it's ever been because of that. So, I mean, but I think what they're doing is they're getting into like the pitfall of comparing, Slipknot's newest album to something ridiculously heavy, like Brand of Sacrifice or something like that. You compare the two, and Brand of Sacrifice shits on them in terms of heaviness, but it's not comparable, because they're well beyond like needing to out heavy anybody. They proved that. They did that in their time. Now they can just write their songs and coast it out until they're 70.
It's kind of like, have you heard Iowa? Because the opening track is just a blast beat.
Right. I mean, Joey Jordison brought blast beats to the mainstream. No one really did that before him. He made it okay to exist in the mainstream and play blast beats as a drummer.
And that's where a lot of people that's where the respect for me gets lost with people like that, because it's like you're like, a lot of people are like, oh, Slipknot sucks, and then they're like, oh, here, check out our new track, and it's like, you do realize it sounds like Slipknot, right?
No, it doesn't.
It happens
sounds like
all the time,
because they'll cite like the earlier band. Like a band now is influenced by the Bridge Band, the band that was influenced by Slipknot. That's who's influencing kids now. So they don't understand the path that was taken. Like if you go to any of like the original, because I mean we were like out and touring in the original like deathcore wave, any of those big bands that really made it out of there, like Whitechapel, Suicide Silence, Carnifex, any of them. If you ask any member of any of those bands, like, what are some of your influence? Every single one of them will say Slipknot. Absolutely. They have to listen to their music. It's there. It's like it's in their songs,
Yeah, it's like you don't like a lot of them bands where you hear the one string like choruses or the one string verses. You're like, I wonder where you got that from.
See, and I've never really been a big deathcore fan. That passed me by, right? The Whitechapel Suicide, it just passed me by. But I find myself listening to more deathcore, more of the modern stuff that gladly talks about their influence of nu metal, that they say, yeah, you know, we grew up listening to fucking Linkin Park. You know, we really like that. Like bands like Spite, bands like Phil. I like Left to Suffer. I like that stuff because there is some blatant nu metal influence and they're not embarrassed to talk about it. And Jordan, Tim and I had this conversation yesterday where we've reached the point where it's no longer embarrassing to say, you know what, I really, really, really fuck with Korn. Like, and I really, really, really like Life is Peachy. Like, it's not, for a while, everybody was like, you know, like you said, they're like, oh, go away, I won't talk about that. But now it's like, yeah, man, that's what I grew up on. I like it. And there's that embarrassment floor dropping has opened up the dialogue.
Yeah. And I mean, now there's this big resurgence of that nu metal sound that's starting to kind of emerge again with bands like Tetrarch or Tala. Yeah. Have you heard Tala before?
Yep. Oh yeah.
They're so good.
Yeah.
Like they should have came out like 30 years ago. I know they weren't born yet, but if they could go back, they would have killed it in like 9, you know, and now it's like it's becoming a thing again, which I'm so pumped about because it's like this was a great time in songwriting for metal, not just like out heavying the next, you know, generation or style or whatever.
Yeah.
There was great. That's why if you look at any rock station across America, they still play shit from the 90s and like early 2000s because this was the last time that metal had like songs that were that big to where it earned radio play. Yeah. And I mean, I guess they have kind of a bias against extreme metal anyway, which is stupid. That's why no one listens to the radio anymore. If they would play like modern metal, then they'd have a lot more listeners, but they refuse to believe that, well, no one wants to hear all that screaming nonsense. You know?
Even if it was like a band like Trivium or something, you would, you know what I mean? Like
there's stuff that's like, accessible. Yeah.
But I love that you brought up Tetrarch because I think right now that's a band that is going to help more women get into like nu metal and the metal scene. You know what I mean? Because they see the girl playing guitar and she shreds.
She absolutely
You're just like, it's going to make more women want to pick up guitars. And I love that kind of shit.
Yeah. I always get a kick out of the, you know, being older, right? I always get a kick out of people who are like, well, we need more women in the scene. I'm like, yo, not for nothing. In the late 90s, it was all dudes. It was all
except for
dudes.
Kitty. Kitty broke the mold.
It was Kitty and Tara, the bassist from Martyr AD. It was and Candace from Walls of Jericho. It was all dudes touring. It was all dudes at shows. It was a sausage fest, right? And it's like, are we where we want to be? No, not yet. But I think it's you know, you can't view things ahistorical. I think we're way more inclusive than it was. And now, I mean, a 5-piece metal band of women gets up and you're like, all right, fuck it. I don't really care. Can they play? Oh, they can play even fucking better. Let's go.
Which is how it should be.
Yeah.
You know, like, and there's so many, like, you heard like Sarah Longfield?
Yeah.
She's nuts. She's
that
like,
girl's ridiculous.
You know, like I think that's probably a part of, you know, I'm glad that the metal scene has started to become more and more accepting of women as musicians because there's some really fucking good ones. And they work just as hard or actually harder than the men musicians do because they also have to fight for like acceptance and not
respect.
Somebody yelling like, show me your tits while they're playing, you know, like, I'm glad that you're right. Like how bands like Tetrarch or Sarah Longfield or like Nita Strauss, like that there's just these really monster like female guitar players in the scene. You know, I'm waiting for just like the next Kitty, but of just all like just the heaviest band on earth. Just, you know, women to just come out fucking shit on everybody.
Right.
I think you're gonna see that too.
Oh yeah, the female version of Meshuggah where they come out and reinvent everything in one shot. You know, like that's why I find Meshuggah so fascinating. Is every time they release a new album, everybody else just basically stops what they're doing and they go, oh fuck, like because they completely reset everything. Just, you know, hey, we're good, we're recording the whole album live. Hey, we're recording the whole album to machine. Hey, we're not even going to use a real drummer. Thomas is just going to learn how to play this. Like every time they do something, it's something like, well shit, why did I think of that? Hey, we're going to put 2 more strings on our guitars. And that intro to the album, what is it, Nothing, what is that, Stenga?
Yeah,
where the guitar sounds like a bass. Blah, 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 blah. It's like
they were the first 8-string band, but they weren't they weren't popular yet, even after that.
Yeah.
But Sugar's such a weird band because they were technically a part. They were in the new metal era. Like they were on Ozfest when it was all new metal bands. I mean, it was a very. I mean, Meshuggah sounded way different, like on their really early albums compared to now, obviously. But you know, it's weird how they grew to the point where they were getting a look, at least. You know, it was still obscure and extreme, but they were that good to where they still got on like these big major festivals and stuff, and they're still pretty much a top band now. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I
they
remember
have groove.
the first time you heard Chaosphere, you were like, "What the fuck is this?"
Great
like,
record.
So Jordan, I got to ask you this question. I ask it to every band member we ever have on, and it always stumps everybody. So, Breathing Process goes out, and you get to pick who you open for and who opens for you. No holds barred. Who do you pick? So you're going to open for somebody, right? There's going to be a headliner, and then there's going to be direct support. And you get to pick both ways. Who do you pick?
So we're opening. You mean
you're solid middle of the bill. So you're supporting somebody, but somebody's also opening.
So is this like new metal or
anybody? Like if you got to take your pick, if the label said, Jordan, pick them and we will line them up, who would you take?
So I would absolutely die if we could tour with Emperor.
Okay.
Hell yes.
But they're kicking around a little bit with the festivals here and there. I don't know if that would ever be a possibility, but they're for our band, they're the absolute biggest influence that I have, like, for what our music sounds like. I love every record. And I know this is like not a black metal podcast, whatever, but I'm a huge fan of their later work that a lot of like black metal fans don't like. Like they like their early shit. I like their later stuff when Ison started to get all technical and weird and played an 8-string and shit like that. Anyway, so that would be who I would. Them are like Dimmu Borgir. Like obviously they're pretty rad. They're another huge influence for us too. Like obviously we sound pretty much just like them, I guess sometimes.
That's why I love the band so much.
Yeah. As far as like another band to open, I really like Worm Shepherd a lot. They're on the same label as us. They're like young. Their singer's like fucking 18 or something, and just sounds like a behemoth. I don't understand. Oh, Behemoth was another one I'd probably choose if I could pick from 3, because they're not all going to be available at the same time. I got to give myself options. You know what I mean? One of those 3 would be great. Worm Shepherd would be a really cool another band to tour with. I'm trying to think of another. Like there's so many. Like there's of all the bands out now. Like there's so many good ones, and musicians just keep getting better and better. And you know, I look at a band like like Worm Shepherd. Like they're to the level. It took me like a good 2 albums and album cycles to even get to make music as comprehensive as theirs when they're like 18, 19-year-old kids. I had already like been out in the shit for like 3-4 years before I was like, okay, this is like how this is supposed to go. So it's exciting to see like what will become of kind of modern metal, because it keeps getting younger and younger. Like kids are just way more talented than like people our age were at their age. I feel like.
I think the internet has a big thing to do with that as well.
Yeah. Just accessibility to the internet. It's like it just makes everyone has to. It's a race to get better and better and faster. And
like you don't have to go anywhere to get guitar lessons. You just go on YouTube. There's a million of them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Or the drumming, right? Like you look at like John Longstreth and look at Adam Jarvis and all those guys, where it's like, shit, I guess this is what I have to do if I want to compete, right? So fuck it, let's party. And like these guys like gravity blasting. What's his name from Beneath the Massacre? Is it Anthony? I watch that playthrough all the time, and my jaw is bouncing off the floor because he's not even breaking a sweat, and I'm like, he's blasting away. This is something else.
John Longstreth is too good for his own good. I feel like
yeah.
we played a show with him like when he was in Origin like years and years ago, and I just stood next to the drum kit and was like just jaw dropped the entire time. Like,
he's unreal.
What?
Like you're looking around the room like, do you see this?
Yeah. I had no words. You know, he did which it was the Gore Guts album, Colored Sands, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that to me is the best work he's done, because you can, a lot of those older Origin recordings are super like just crunchy and hard to harsh.
Yeah.
Whereas the Gore Guts album was like really like clean and polished sounding, you know, so you could really hear like all the crazy shit that he's doing. And it's one of my favorite death metal records ever, is that one. I like John. I know that has nothing to do with new metal, but
no.
Speaking of producers, the one that you guys just went to has to be one of the top right now.
Dave Attero.
Dave is a sick motherfucker with on the producing side, man.
Yeah, he's actually the one that showed me Tetrarch, because he did their record.
You told me that. That's right.
Yeah,
That's
and
right.
I like, so Dave recorded our Odyssey Undead record. Granted that was like a long ass time ago, but we've always stayed in contact ever since then, because it was the coolest experience even then, because he was still like he was still a really good producer then. He just didn't, the big bands he had done at that time were like Cephalic Carnage, and he had done like one Cattle Decapitation record there, but that was before Cattle Decapitation really like shot to the top of the death metal scene, you know. They were still like, they were known, but they weren't like huge like they are now.
Yeah.
And he's just like, he understands, and even back then when we did our record with him, like he knows what we're trying to sound like, and it's really hard to communicate that to like anyone else, you know, to me, like, because he comes, like, he used to play in like a black metal band, like he knows that space and that kind of atmosphere. And I really want like a modern polished record, but I don't want something that's like, that sounds like we just programmed it. Like I like to retain some kind of organic feel to it while still sounding like, you know, like we're really good.
Yeah.
Which we're not, but he makes us sound, you know, like we have played our instruments before, I guess.
Dude, I think the Odyssey record is nothing against your new stuff, because it's great, but that record, man, that's a fucking masterpiece to me, dude. I love that fucking record, dude.
I love that record too, and I hate that we never really got to tour on it because of just a bunch of weird like music business issues that we had at the time.
Yeah.
So like it's weird. I think back on that record now, because we've been like kind of trying to rehearse a couple of the songs from it to like potentially play it, because it's all, I mean, the people that are in the band now most of them weren't in the band then. And I remember like some of the songs, like I'm going through like the riffs of it, and I think to myself like, how the fuck did I ever manage to write this? Like I don't know how I ever used to play that fast, or that in like think in such odd time signatures and stuff compared to now anyways. But as far as I've ever been able to tell, like that's most people who like our band, that's their favorite record.
Yeah.
So I think we're trying to play some more stuff off of it on the shows and tours and stuff that we have coming up. And our new record has a lot of kind of elements from that on it, I think. Maybe. Well, I guess you'll when you hear the whole thing.
We'll know soon enough. So speaking of that, Jordan, what are your touring plans coming up? What do you got lined up?
So right now, most of the stuff that we're looking at the moment isn't until next year, because our album doesn't come out till October, and because of COVID, like most of the rest of 2021 is just stuff that was booked for like 2020 but got postponed. So we're just kind of like, we didn't want to try to like force our way onto the road or something like that, or do like stuff that is just going to be like a money pit for no real reason. So we're just spending the time between now and the end of the year, like kind of kind of like just working on our online content and stuff like that. We have a run with Battlecross in October, I think.
Okay.
Wow.
But that's only like 3 or 4 days, I think. And then we just have like a bunch of regional kind of shows. Like we're playing with Jungle Rod on Saturday.
No shit.
That should be pretty cool in Toledo. This band on Prosthetic called Summoning the Lick or Lish. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, the Leash, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it Leash? I don't know how to pronounce it.
I'm pretty sure it is, yeah.
I'm going to ask them because that has confused me for a while. But yeah, we're playing with them on Friday, I think, somewhere in Ohio. So we're just doing like a lot of weekend runs, week-long, like little things. And then the stuff for next year we can't announce yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously.
You're still in PA, right?
Yeah, we're in Pittsburgh.
Okay, yeah, I thought so. Okay. Is there like anything new metalish going on up there? Because I know Pittsburgh is just basically a beat down town, but like is there is there like anything new metal going on? Like
I have not found a single new metal. Actually, well, there's a band called Reign of Z that is pretty good. They're from here. They're going on a tour, I think, pretty soon with like Combi Christ and King 810.
Okay.
And they're from here. Like they're kind of like have that Evanescence vibe to them. They're pretty cool.
Oh, okay. Well, Code Orange up there, who's kind of can put in that realm now.
But the thing they're doing it so well because they're like slowly just molding hardcore with like 90s alt rock. And I love it. Like they posted a picture not too long ago where they're in a studio with Billy Corgan and he's like helping them write some songs or something like that, or working on some of their songs with them. They're really going after like that 90s nostalgia, which is right in my wheelhouse.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah, we were talking about that. Their next album could be a straight new metal album. It could be a straight industrial album. It could go back to being straight hardcore and nobody would be surprised. Everybody would just kind of go, yeah, I guess it kind of fits.
Those are the greatest bands though. And they're modeled after new metal bands where they have this unique kind of like, I don't know what the word, like they can just go, they can go in any direction because they've eliminated expectations because they have their own thing right now. Could you think of another band in the scene that sounds like Code Orange? No, probably not. Right?
No,
because they have that kind of vibe. That's what we've always tried to be. It's like not pigeonhole ourselves into like one space so that if we added some other element as we grow, that it's not like when, you know, a lot of people really hated that Whitechapel started going toward like clean singing and stuff like that. But it's because they've always kind of stayed in that same space of deathcore. So when they start adding more melodic elements, everyone's like, oh, what the but not every, I mean, a lot of people liked it too. I love it. I think it's the best shit they've done.
It goes back to what you said when we started the interview, where you said you need that dynamism, right? You need that comparison. Because if you're straight blasting the whole time, that's all you hear. But you need to, when you can compare it against something else that's not as heavy or a little bit slower, when you compare it to something not as heavy, it makes the heavier parts that much heavier because you're contrasting now in your head, like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, and it's because it's about how the songs are written, not about what you're playing. Like a big misconception in heavy music is that the lower tuned you are, like the heavier you are, or whatever.
Yep.
You know, and which is true to an extent. Like, but I mean, look at a band like Lamb of God is tuned to like E standard, and they have parts that are heavy as shit. Like,
yep.
You know, or Winds of Plague when they were in the scene, they were tuned to E standard. Like it has nothing to do with the tuning, it's what you're playing.
Which blows my mind because I literally just found that out like a month ago that they were in standard.
Winds of Plague?
Like, and I was like,
yeah,
what?
That was their thing, like, because it doesn't sound like it. You know, or like you know the band Silosis?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm fairly certain they're also in E standard, but
you're right.
He just plays like weird chords so that it sounds like a 7-string.
Yeah.
Like the way that he voices them is something like it's crazy, you know. But it's
Josh is a ridiculous guitar player.
Yeah. It's the riffs that you play, not the tuning or not the the amount of breakdowns isn't going to make you a heavier band. It's, you know, where you put them and what you put around it that makes it impactful.
Yeah,
You know?
it's
Yeah,
kind of like me. Like I bought a 7-string and I'm like, I'm gonna be super heavy on this next song I write, and then I'm like, I kind of like the drop C better.
Yeah,
You know what I
because
mean?
it's like that's one thing that I feel like kind of separates us too, is that now everyone in the deathcore scene pretty much exclusively uses 7 strings
Yeah,
and are tuned around the G sharp area, like
Yeah.
A or G sharp. So we still play in drop B like we always have, which is significantly higher than what a lot of bands play in now. So it kind of gives our music like a little bit different of a vibe, even if it's the same style, like, obviously we get compared to, Shadow of Intent or Lorna Shore and stuff like that. But both of them are a lot lower tuned than we are. So if you really compare us like back to back, they sound way different.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're 100% right on that.
So
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys, since
Shoot.
we're on topic for new metal. So of all of the new metal bands from that era, is there any one that you feel like should have made it or should have blown up more than they ever, like, but they just never did? Who should have got further?
Yes, 36 Crazy Fist.
Great
Fist.
choice.
Yeah,
I
I hate it that they never got the exposure they should have.
So I'm older than Tim, so I'm going to say the obvious choice for me is Snot. But again, Lynn Straight dying, that was never going to happen. If I had to pick a band where their members are still alive, I think Ultra Spank should have been huge. I think his voice, Neil's voice, is absolutely amazing. And Tim and I did a deep dive where we went through Low Pro, we went through the stuff they're doing now, Life on Planet 9. His voice is unreal, and they were so unique. And I mean, yeah, I don't think they did the 2 albums. The second album was a flame out because new metal was on its way out, and then they just kind of fell to the side. But yeah, I think if people had paid more attention to his voice and some of the riffing that they did, they would have been huge.
Yeah, definitely. Mine and this band actually, like, they did obviously find like some success, but to me, it's Ill Nino.
Oh, hell
that first album was great.
That's one of my favorite like albums, not even just new metal albums. That Revolution album was so heavy, and their singer was so good and had all like just everything you need in hit songs and hit choruses and stuff. Like, they nailed it. They just like, I think it was just the timing that they caught on to like the later wave of new metal when it was on the decline.
If I had to go top 10 new metal songs, If You Still Hate Me is in that list.
Oh,
that's my favorite song by them.
But again,
incredible song.
They had tracks, right? They wrote good songs. Tim, when we do the Ill Nino deep dive, we'll have Jordan on. When we do Revolution,
please do, because I love almost every song on that record. But If You Still Hate Me, I was watching this old like Ozfest video of them like a couple weeks ago. It was just, it looked like I could smell the 90s air from watching the video on YouTube. Like, it was all grainy. Everyone had on big pants, like weird spiky neon colored hair and shit. And I was like, man, this is the era that I miss, is going to Ozfest as a teenager and seeing other weirdos. And like, there was that song. I remember like the way original iteration of this band when I was still like in high school. And by this time, like, I was into like heavier shit than new metal by then. Like, I was listening to like death metal and metalcore, all that kind of stuff. I had this argument with our drummer at the time that If You Still Hate Me was just as heavy as any Hatebreed song that he could find. And he was like, no, it's not. Like, he had never heard it. And then I played it. And that when it gets to the end, when they're playing the bongos and getting the little closed hi-hat build up into that big explosive like bridge, and he was just like, okay, I guess it is pretty heavy.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Well, listen, Jordan, I want to be cognizant of your time, right? Because it's a Saturday night, you got other shit to do too. I want to give you a chance. If other people want to find your band, our listeners, they want to find you, they want to find merch, they want to find tour info, where do they find you? Where do they find the band information?
So Instagram is Instagram/The Breathing Process. Pretty simple. We have a link tree on there that has like every possible social media address that we have. Our Bandcamp is thebreathingprocess.bandcamp.com. I don't know our indie merch link off the top of my head because it's weird. But
go to indie merch. Yeah.
If you go to indie merch, like it, or go to our Instagram and click the link tree, it's all on there. We have a bunch of new merch that we're putting up in like a week.
Ooh,
I think
hoodie season's coming.
Hoodie season and windbreaker season.
Oh, fuck yeah.
There we go.
I'll be ordering one.
I'm trying to be a part of windbreaker season.
Fuck yeah.
So, you know.
Awesome.
But yeah, anytime you guys want to talk about new metal, I have so much more.
Oh, we're taking you up on that, Jordan. You're gonna regret saying that. So on behalf of Jordan, Tim, and myself, I want to thank all of you listeners, watchers, YouTube, whatever, for tuning in. On behalf of Tim and myself, I want to thank Jordan for coming on. You can find us at newbreed_podcast at on Instagram, on Twitter. We have a Facebook group. It's getting kind of lit lately. We made a whole bunch of friends at the Limp Bizkit concert that never was. So if you like what you heard, reach out at newbreedpodcast@gmail.com. So once again, we want to thank you, Jordan, for coming on. Until next time, this is New Breed saying cheers.
See you.